Hey, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. David Sikorsky with CCA Maryland here to give you an update on what's going on here in the Chesapeake region, in the Mid-Atlantic. There's lots going on with so many different topics. And so first and foremost, thank you to the Chesapeake Bay Boat Show and our great friends at Combos for Kids and Anglers Sports Center and the Fishing Corner, all the different fishing captains and guides and tackle and in the industry that were holding down the corner of the Chesapeake Bay Boat Show. Big shout out to you all and to our friends at Costa Tequila. If you got a chance to come out to the boat show, you get to sample some of their great products and even some nice salty oysters from Dan Worrell down at Fallen Pine Oysters. So it was a great weekend. Put it on your calendar for next year. And if not, get ready for some of the outside shows that'll be here with the warmer weather, hopefully before we know it. So as spring starts to unfold, there's lots changing, lots going on. First and foremost, I hope you see that the yellow perch limits have been cut in half from 10 to 5. There's a whole bunch of information on that. And it's been an ongoing process and an ongoing saga with that fishery. The yellow perch fishery is impacted mostly by water quality, by the environment, just like we're learning, about the straight bass fishery and everything else and how, the chemistry and what's happening in the water and what food's available and what temperatures are prevailing or what drive the recruitment or repopulation of these fisheries in their spawning activities. And unfortunately, in various places, we've seen precipitous decline in yellow perch. And everyone I talk to that knows this fishery well says protect them. Protect them. They're too important. That said, there's plenty of other folks that want to keep more and take them home. And it's always that give and take that's happening in these fisheries. And at CCA, our core focus from our beginning is to advise and educate all of you on conservation and make sure you know where the information is, how you can engage, who's doing what. And also, yes, we advocate and we do it in writing, right on paper, or videos like this and information that we provide to our members so you can get involved. And so a lot of today's video is about that. So hang on, we're going to get going here and talk about what's happening in the region and how you can get involved. And I would be remiss if I wasn't talking about the disaster in the Potomac and the amazing leadership of the Potomac Riverkeeper. To Dean, shout out. Thank you for all your hard work. Folks, see that orange button in the top right corner over there? Donate. This organization can't do the important watchdog work it's doing in this Potomac disaster, the massive sewer spill, without folks like you, folks like me helping out and pitching in. I'm going to make a donation, and I encourage you to as well. And you can find the link to this in the link tree in both Virginia and Maryland if you want to just check it out. And again, kudos to the Riverkeeper. Check them out on Instagram for updated information. Long story short here is that a massive piece of our infrastructure in the most populated portion of Maryland has failed and has poisoned our river with sewage and everything else that comes with it. And it's going to reach and impact things for a long time. It's been locked under the ice. And again, look to the experts and what it means, and that's the Riverkeepers. And again, whether they're here in the Potomac or anywhere else doing this work, thank you for keeping an eye on these things. We need watchdogs like you all. And so 2 weeks ago, I spent the whole week at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, or a great portion of it. Oops, and I'll remove the darn link. There it is. That's simple, asmfc.org, like you see at the end of the screen. And of course, the commission is the state compact, which is there to sustainably manage our Atlantic fisheries. Absolutely everything you need to know about this is right here on their website. But I want to highlight the agenda from the meeting we held from February 3rd to 5th. And some of the top level items and things I think you should click on and listen to or read, whichever is your choice, because I think they're informative and can help you as anglers understand how to navigate this process, which again is a core part of the work we do at CCA, making sure you know where to get the information you need and you care about. So as you scroll down here, you'll see all the different species boards. I sit on the majority of these. Dr. Allison Colden sits on the herring and menhaden boards. And so throughout the week, there's lots of information going on, lots of conversations happening, and it's all linked right here. And then every single species here, if you go back to the homepage, I'll show you before I'm done, has the actual species section. So you can find out all that information, which staff's in charge, what the timelines are like, when you can expect some changes to happen, and if there's a public comment component open right now or coming in the future. The meetings happen quarterly. So 3 of them are in Crystal City. 1 is at travels to member states. And again, I'd encourage folks to check out the website and follow along. One thing you want to check out from this meeting is a quick update on MRIP. That is the Information and Data Collection Program that is a federal and state partnership driven by the feds. managed by the states, literally on a dock to dock and person to person with clipboard kind of basis. Because remember, we're the customers, we're the licensees of our states where we fish, and the states are important to connect to the anglers. So anyway, it's a collective effort to execute MRIP, and there's lots of other things happening on the rec data front I'm going to talk about soon. Check this out. What you're going to find out is that there's been some realignment of MRIP and statistical analysis to look at how it may be recalibrated in the future, and that will drive management in the coming years. And so that was this portion was to let board members know what's going on and have some question and answer about the approach that the MRIP leadership has taken. And so Coastal Pelagics Board is actually where the cobia, Spanish mackerel are in there as well. And so check that out, but no real amazing information on this one, this meeting or updates that are going to directly change seasons. The cobia fishery should maintain status quo into the near future, and then there'll be an assessment to figure out what's next. The Menhaden Board had a lot of dialogue around the advancing draft addendum, and the draft addendum would affect how the reduction fishery is managed in the Chesapeake Bay, both in time and space. And so there's been an analysis of who's catching what. There's a group called the plan development team that's working on this type of stuff, and then some of the technical people, and then some information's confidential because of the number of participants in the fishery. I mean, complicated stuff. But the bottom line is there's progress being made towards analyzing this fishery and managing this fishery based on the Menhaden's role in the ecosystem and the needs of the Chesapeake Bay, whether it be the resource, the ecosystem, or other stakeholders. And that's a big part of the conversation going on that front. Also, before I forget, Menhaden are being considered in the Virginia legislature. And so this is one of these action item opportunities for you. There is a link in the Virginia link tree on this one. Virginians, these are your legislators. And what this tells you here is some background information on this, but I think you'd have to be living under a rock to not know about this issue in this region. But there's one bill, House Bill 1049, that will solve a lot of problems here. Check this out, and kudos to our friends at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation for leading so much work in Richmond, as well as a lot of the passionate anglers and other stakeholder groups, VSSA and others that lead the charge there in Richmond. And CCA members out there hearing this, let's get organized. Let's get working with all these different partners. Start with providing your voice here, and keep an eye out and reach out if you want to get more involved in this issue or any of the other issues back at the commission. So last two pieces here for the commission meeting. Really, it's three. Black sea bass, we've had some changes happen in the management of the fishery, and I want to pull up one of the data plots on this one before talking about it some more, and I'm going to do the same thing. Or let me explain to you what happened with striped bass before going over there. With striped bass, I think a lot of conversation around the work group that is coming. The work group is going to be discussed more at the May meeting, and we'll see what happens with it. So listen to that dialogue if you'd like. There was also some public comment from Maryland regarding the baseline. I responded and made the record reflect what happened to get us to the point with the regulatory changes that are pending, and you'll hear about in a second. But I think the most important takeaway for me that was eye-opening and really interesting was the presentation from NOAA Fisheries, the report on considerations of aquaculture of Atlantic striped bass by Danielle Blacklock. This is the second time she has come to the commission in recent years, and really interesting stuff. I'll just leave it at that. Click the audio link, and keep an eye on the YouTube. So let me see what happens here. I'll click it for you. There we go. It takes you into YouTube. It takes you to the board meeting. And there you go. That's the information you need. Ms. Blacklock was towards the end of the meeting here. Here you go. This is where she starts and talks about aquaculture. So what is that? About an hour and 52 into the meeting is when her presentation starts. And so check that out. Again, that's easy to find right there on the ASMFC website. As I mentioned, black sea bass had a lot of discussion. On the agendas where you find the audio, but also right down here on the homepage is where you can find information about the species. It'll talk to you about the change in our understanding of these fish, what's going on with the various stock assessments. And this is a unique one because, as you see here, summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass, the management board, which I sit on, includes those species in a complex because they have similar things going on in the way where they exist and the way they're surveyed and the way they're caught and pursued. They're also caught in federal waters and state waters. And so there's a different complexity to managing these fish. It's really driven by the state laws and how, the federal law, and how the federal law requires certain things of a fisheries management plan or a stock. And so there's a little different process here where we meet jointly with the council, the Mid-Atlantic Council at times, to deliberate on a state level. So for state waters, and a federal level for federal waters, and make sure that those regulations complement each other. Otherwise, there's all sorts of other things that happen if we can't come to agreement. So anyway, I wanted to highlight here the stock status and kind of point out how you can fast forward to the pictures in a lot of these documents and this information for the average angler, the average interested person out there that wants to know more about these fisheries. But what the blue blob here tells the tale of black sea bass. This is the understood abundance going on in the spawning stock. So not abundance, but spawning stock biomass, the actual millions of pounds of black sea bass. You can guess what the average size is of a spawning black sea bass pound wise and do some math and figure out what this means in numbers of fish. But this is how the statistical modeling and stock assessment works. What this is showing us that over time is we've had this massive spike in biomass, something like 283% of the target. And so the target is that horizontal solid line. That's where we don't want that's where we want to manage the blue blob to. So the blue blob should be right around that line if we're doing it right. Well, Mother Nature's given us a lot of black sea bass. They've expanded into the north over the last decade plus, and lots of people can catch black sea bass, which means it's hard to even liberalize the fishery, which is what just happened at the last meeting. And so there's a lot of dialogue around how we liberalize, because there's a lot of fish out there, but also you have to remember this is a constantly moving thing. The orange bars are a representation of thousands of fish coming in as recruitment into the population. And then you have the biomass of adults. They're living in different portions of the coast. And so you have a northern section, New Jersey's their own region, and then a southern region. And we deliberated to try and figure out a plan which will thankfully liberalize for all recreational anglers and the for-hire fleet up and down the coast this year. And maybe not be perfect, but again, we talked about it for hours. You can go ahead and listen to the YouTube video on that one. So, as I mentioned, striped bass in Menhaden. Striped bass has a public comment period open with Maryland DNR. This is right on our homepage. So this is actually a repeat of November. The way the Maryland process works is that DNR puts together a scoping package and has a 2-week public comment process. Previously, they review these types of actions with their Sport Fish Advisory Commission, their Tidal Fisheries Advisory Commission, any relevant stakeholder advisory body. They review this regulation. It's a striped bass regulation. So anyway, this is an old post of ours that's been out there since we put together a coalition letter back in November. If you click on it, it's been updated. You can see that there's public comment open until the 23rd. And what that'll do is you can click here, see this DNR regulation overview doc I'm going to talk about in a second. But really, it's a Google sheet is what you're looking for. So you scroll down, you fill out the information, you provide your input, knowing that we say yes. We say yes, and who is we? It's the American Sport Fishing Association, CCA, Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, Marine Retailers of America, Marine Trades Association of Maryland and all their membership, National Marine Manufacturers Association, an important organization that helps us get to the fish, folks. The boats, the tackle shops here, All Tackle, anglers, and all these fishing clubs. Kudos to everybody. Fish Talk Magazine, Maryland Light Tackle Guides, and many of the guides that participate there. There's even folks here with commercial licenses and such. It's not as simple of an issue or a one side versus the other type thing as it feels sometimes when you sit in my seat, because there's a lot of push and saying, oh, that's not conservation. We're going to kill too many fish. And reality is DNR has done a really good job of laying out what's going on with striped bass. And what's really important and what really makes me comfortable in advancing catch and release fishing in the spring period is right here. When the fish have moved into the spawning grounds, these red tributaries are where the majority of spawning is happening. The fish are protected from being harassed, being bothered in any way by recreational anglers. This has been in place since the 80s. And now that would continue through April while the spawn is happening. And then in May, a main stem section of the bay would be open for fishing. Not trophy fish, just the 19 to 24s. And then the green would continue on into the season. And then in the summertime, when it's the hottest of the hot, we shut it down. The fish have already made it through a hot period in July. They're stressed. Anybody that's caught August striped bass knows they're not very good to eat. And we have no business catching and releasing or targeting them that time of year. And so that's a 30-day period and a 31-day period that hopefully other fisheries are available to provide opportunity. It's never easy with the trade-off here, but I think it's really incumbent upon the Chesapeake Bay jurisdictions to protect as much of the small population as we can, the small fish population, so they can continue to grow and make up for the dip in spawning stock biomass that is predicted. So let me go up to the chart real quick and show you what else you can find here. So this shows over time, similar to the black sea bass chart. The bar graphs are the recruitment of young fish. And then the big blue blob is the spawning stock biomass. You have the target, the same, and the dotted line, the threshold. So the threshold is what you do not want to go below with the blue. The target is where you want to manage to and be at. And so it's one of our goals in the plan to be at the target by 2029. That's the red line. We won't quite make it. The recruitment has really suffered in recent years. Also, this overlay right here shows where the 5-year spring closure was put in April. And I've talked about this for 6 years. It was nothing but political trickery. It wasn't actual conservation-driven math to close April. It would have saved 0.64% out of a 20.6% reduction we needed to do. It didn't save any fish. And that's because we know catch and release does not impact fish when you're far enough away from the spawning grounds and when you're using the gear that's currently required and the water is cold and has a decent amount of salinity. So what this shows me as a manager is poor recruitment was not changed because we didn't harass or catch fish in the preseason. What we did do is have drift gillnet fisheries, anchor gillnet fisheries, and hundreds of thousands of pounds of fish coming into the bay, some of which will be spawning, hung up in gillnets and sold. $250, $350, $550, $650 a pound, 20, 30-pound fish, 10-pound fish. It all depends on where they fall and what fishery. But in Maryland, it's 18 to 36 for gillnets. In Virginia, they are limited by the size of the mesh. So is Maryland, but in Virginia, that determines the size of the fish because there is no max size limit until March. The quotas are the quotas, but the quotas are also driven by our understanding of how many fish are out there. That's driven by MRIP. We know that MRIP has serious issues and has overinflated our understanding or the potential abundance of the fishery. So I think if managers are serious, I'm serious about addressing where we're killing spawning stock next. Not can we have to close recreational fisheries in a preseason period for totally forgetting that other people are killing the very fish they claim they want to protect, literally as they come to spawn. And so pre-spawn means something to everyone, but I'd love to define it. What does it actually mean? And if we're going to take people off the water, let's take everybody off the water until we get striped bass back where we need to be. But this idea that closing April and keeping April closed will benefit the striped bass recovery just doesn't add up in any way, shape, or form on paper. And we know that a large biomass of striped bass can produce large year classes, but they can also create really small ones. Look right here. Some of our peak. We only got a couple, poor year classes here. And frankly, this is exactly when CCA started sounding the alarm. And we said, whoa, 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 whoa. This means we're going to have the dip. And we see it in the Chesapeake Bay first because the majority are born here, 80%. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope you're starting to understand some of the dynamics of what's at play here and why certain measures make a lot of sense to pursue and others are frankly a waste of time. So let's hope that there's no further upset of this process because it provides 92% of the days to Maryland anglers to come fishing, people to come to our state, spend money, support small businesses, and especially in a timely fashion because think of a winter like this. We don't have people out fishing. We don't have people spending money. March and April are that time for hope, that time for, the days are getting longer. Things are great. It's the awakening of the spring. Well, we want to get out there fishing. So we've already got a ruined river, iced over bay. Fishing is depressed right now in this region, and we need access to our striped bass. So again, check out all this stuff on our website, and we'll get moving. Speaking of things changing here, so there's legislation in Virginia I talked about. There's the CBF Action Alert. Look to them, follow them. Thank you to them for leading so much work and to other partners in Virginia. Here in Maryland, we have a Sport Fishing and Boating Coalition gathering on February 18th at Metropolitan Kitchen. And so if you heard that and you want to participate, reach out. Information at ccamd.org, and I'll get you connected. I'm reaching out to our local membership to meet with legislators, staff, and others, but it's open to the public. And we'll be talking about some of these bills that have been proposed. And so this one in particular, Senate Bill 755, sponsored by Senators Muse and Hershey. What this does, and you can read it, is I'll show you how you read it. All the bold stuff is new. And so what this is saying is decreeing from the legislative seat, two senators think that we should have no catch and release in the spring. You're going to set the charter boat seasons. You're going to set how many lines you can have in the water at any one time, whether or not your planer boards can be used, how many spot you can have. There's going to be a trophy season. Blah, 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 blah. There's all sorts of stuff in here. Everything I talked about at ASMFC already deliberates, develops the science, and works collectively to manage our striped bass fishery consistent with the fisheries management plan. I'm not sure if these senators realize that if we were to pass this legislation and it was not consistent with ASMFC, what would happen is the Commerce Secretary would shut down our fishery, the entire state's fishery. Because what happened at the last meeting was all the state's implementation plans of the last action were approved by the board. But what we discussed as Maryland would like to notify the board that our regulatory process is still playing out for our baseline, which has been approved by the ASMFC. And so we're not ready to implement it just yet because of our process, which will end here shortly. That will then advise the board that we are in compliance with the ASMFC management plan. There's one other option to remain in compliance with the ASMFC management plan. So it's either the baseline regulation, which DNR has chosen to promulgate and hopefully completely enact, or it's status quo. Closed April, portion of July closed, no May fishery really, or the early May fishery. So again, 83% of the days is what would be the default, or 92% of the days. Those are the only two options allowed based on the agreements that ASMFC has entered into, or the state of Maryland has entered into the ASMFC process. Literally, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, would pen a letter after some process to say, Governor Moore, DNR, you shall shut down your fishery because it's not compliant. So anyway, that's what would happen if this bill was passed. I find it unfortunate that this is the way that we go about these things. I am the legislative proxy for the commission, and neither one of these senators has ever talked to me about my perspective or called a meeting with stakeholders before introducing these types of bills, but that's their purview, and that's my opinion. And so we will go to Annapolis on March 10th to hear this bill, as well as another one. Senator Bailey here has entered a bill that will be heard the same day, which says that pretty much every single recreational caught striped bass must be recorded, either as a priority through a digital app, but also for people that do not have internet access or access to that type of technology. I think it on paper is what it actually says. And so Senator Bailey is a Southern Maryland senator and former natural resources police officer. He also was a co-sponsor for the bill which created the, here you go, let me get to the top of this doc. This is the bill which created the task force which created this report. Senator Bailey was a sponsor of. And so he's entered a bill that says all recreational anglers must take part in a census, reporting every single fish they catch. That's not consistent with what is typically done in fisheries management systems. It's typically a properly structured survey. During this task force, which I shared, we learned a lot about what experts have done around the country to solidify state-based management systems. We wrote a full 29-page report here, which can be found on our website, ccamd.org/data. And what's important, and I think is not consistent with the idea behind every angler and every striped bass being caught, is some information that's down through here. I was on before, I think it's about page 15. We talk about the complexities of data collection, the complexities of management, past efforts to improve fisheries in Maryland. And I think this is really important to highlight because I think this was a great action when it occurred. In Senate Bill 1012, enacted in April of 2007, contained 33 recommendations, 7 of which are also contained in the work of the current task force. are related to it. And so DNR from 2008 on, they've received some more funding for recreational fishing licenses through recreational fishing licenses at that time. And the whole idea was to reform their systems to improve the way they manage our fisheries. And so I think it's important to look back at that, but also look at the more recent specific data task force report and make sure that any legislation which is being considered is based on the realities of fisheries management. So the previous bill, let's not pass something that would make Maryland have to shut down our striped bass fishery because of interstate compact rules. And let's not spend our time trying to make every single angler report their catch. Generally speaking, a census, every single fish being caught has always been focused on commercial fisheries because they're much smaller in participant scale, and it works and it's accountable and enforceable for that fishery. Recreational fishing, I fully support increased reporting. I've been an evangelist of it for more than a decade. It's why I wrote the legislation, which was Senator Bailey and Delegate Jacobs signed on to, and chaired this task force report on behalf of our membership and frankly on behalf of our mission. So check this out. The bottom line is we can solve some problems with rec data. There's more on the plus side happening right now with how data systems and agencies and others are aligned than I've ever seen. And all we need to do is basically understand the activities of rec anglers, but we need to have a structured study, a structured design, and make sure we learn from the past. The state of Virginia, for example, implemented a cobia reporting system, which failed. You were supposed to report every single cobia, and we know what happens. You can just think about your buddies and your friends and go, is that person really going to report accurately? I mean, I couldn't tell you how many charter captains and commercial fishermen I talked to, and it's a secret. Like, nobody's data is accurate. It's all what they can get away with. And unfortunately, that's an underlying component of all this, human nature. And we need, and what this report says, please read it, I'll stop talking about it. But what the report says is that through you creating that relationship, the symbiotic relationship with the agency and with the stakeholders, the funding mechanism, the customer, us, the taxpayer, and the agency, we can do R3 work, recruit, retain, reactivate of anglers, right? Get new people and people back into our fisheries. But the number one way to do that is to manage them sustainably. So with all the political trickery we see always happening with this stuff, it's really hard to actually stabilize the data systems. And let me show you something real quick that's an important last point. And I'm saying this directly to all in the legislature. December 1st, 2022, we submitted this to you all, and I know it was a change of guard, but I know that current leadership has seen this report. I used to chair the Sport Fisheries Advisory Commission, and I've heard time and time again about improvements in part of the strategic plan to improve recreational fisheries data collection. But hey, DNR, let's get to work. Hey, legislature, let's get to work. Let's use this report as a jumping off plan and talk about what's right and what's wrong. Let's better align our catch data on cobia, on striped bass, on red drum, and everywhere they swim within the Chesapeake. Hey, Virginia, you want to work together? Let's do it. We can better survey recreational anglers than ever before, and we just need to say now is the time. No nefarious outcomes, just driving the system that we have so that we all have a better idea of what's out there, who can benefit from it, and when. Making sure that the resource will be there for the future. That's it. All right. So we'll be down in Annapolis talking through a lot of these things. And of course, if this isn't all your bag, but somehow you're still listening to this long Valentine's Day discussion here that I've had with myself, come on over to our website, check out the great ways you can get involved in CCA and some of the great partners that support us. Of course, there's not a lot of fishing going on in the Pickerel Championship or the Great Chesapeake Invasives Count right now. And we've got work to do to highlight the problems with the Potomac and kind of reset the invasives count this year. But April 1st, we'll have a brand new one. It'll just reset. It's still free. It's just going to be bigger, better, more prizes. And a special shout out to our friends down here, the official cooler of CCA Maryland. We shipped out some Engels last week to some 2025 winners. We've got more on the way. Engel is an amazing supporter. And with our invasive fish, we want you taking them home. You need a high performance cooler. Why not get the original one? And maybe you can get one get one for free by participating in the invasives count, because we'll continue to give away a lot of Engel products throughout the invasives count as we move forward into 2026. So everybody be careful out there. Be safe. Click, click, click. Do your public comments. Maryland, Virginia, reach out to us. Follow us on all the social stuff. And I hope to see you all soon at one of our upcoming banquets because we've got a calendar full right here. Got a lot of stuff going on. And last but not least, the Northern Virginia banquet, you have until February 21st to get your early bird pricing. So make sure you click on that as well. It's on our calendar and theirs. Hope to see you all out there this spring, and let's get ready for some fun fishing. Thank you.